Yeah, my name is Cameron Lundstrom, and I am a parent advocate with the Office of Respondent Parent Counsel. Is that I'm both a product of the child welfare system. I went through the child welfare system as a child, and as an adult also, when I was in my active addiction. My mom had me when she was young. She was 17, and she suffered from a substance abuse issue and some mental health issues. These began to manifest as we got older. After her divorce, she met my stepdad. They were married for about 4 years. They had my little brother. When they divorced, she did not handle it very well, and she fell deeper into her addiction, which led to involvement with the courts and my rebellion. So at that time, I was like 10 or 11, maybe 12 years old. And I had already began to display anger. I was a very angry child because of that distance between my mom and I from the drugs. So when she gave birth to my little brother, she slipped a disc in her back. And her addictive behavior started with the pain management. And then I think it was exacerbated by the divorce from my stepdad. Which really hit her hard, and she fell deeper into that. I felt a lot of abandonment even while I was still present with my mom, because my mom was not present in the parenting, right? So I felt, she was distracted. I was the enabler, or the I took care of my mom when she was too high. I lied for her to my grandparents. I practically raised my little brother. I did those things. But I felt abandoned by her when she, what culminated in her addiction was a suicide attempt. And that had a large impact on me because I was the one who found her. That really stimulated the distance between my mom and I at that point. They emancipated at 17. My dad had a rule. He said, if you don't want to go to school, you got to get your GED and you got to get a job. Okay, did that. But I really wasn't going anywhere. And I met a girl, fell in love, had a baby. And this is right about 1990. And my dad, who was a 2-time Vietnam vet, was like, hey, there's going to be a war in the Persian Gulf. You should go. His idea was that you need to find this regimented structure. You need more structure in your life. I took his advice. I served in the tail end of Desert Shield, Desert Storm with Amphibious Ready Group 3. My marriage had begun to deteriorate, because we were young, and when you spend a year and a half away from you grow, right? We both grew, but we grew in different directions. And so coming back and trying to find a path in that, plus I still had a lot of childhood trauma. My truth is that I didn't suffer battlefield trauma during the war. I would never disrespect my fellow veterans in saying that. But that experience and coming back began to manifest my childhood trauma, the things that I had left unresolved and suppressed, began to then come out, especially as I used more drugs and alcohol to cope with the reintegration, with the re-entry. Every time I've got arrested or been in a structured environment like that, I have sought to get better myself, right? Here's my truth about my addiction. Once I'm on methamphetamine, I do not have the power to stop on my own. The only time I stop is after I'm put in a concrete box and I can't get it in anymore. But as long as I can get that period of a month, 2 months, 3 months off of it, then I can begin to fight on my own. Then I'm like, you know what, I don't want to do this. Now I have the strength to make the decision on another life. When I'm in the active addiction, I don't have that ability to do that. So I was in and out of prison several times. In 2011, I got really sideways and committed some real serious crimes. At this point, I was about 42 years old, so I had been in active addiction for about 20. I was looking at the rest of my life in prison. Of course, that got my attention to the point where the courts responded with giving me enough time to do the adequate work that I needed to. the big change for me was character development, and that takes time. But there was a big transcendent moment that shifted my life again in 2017 when I found a lump in my neck. Actually, it was 2016 I found the lump. By the time they sent me to the doctor, it was 2017. It took them 15 months to send me to a doctor. By that time, it was 3 lumps in my neck, and I got a cancer diagnosis. It was a metastatic squamous cell carcinoma. And the doctor, I just met her. They sent me to the doctor. I'm all shackled up. She sits me down in a chair like this, and she's a little old lady. She's like in her 60s, and she's like 5'2". So she's like eye to me right now while she's talking to me, and she just feels my neck, and she says, look, I see this all the time. I know exactly what it is. It's metastatic squamous cell carcinoma. It has a 5-year survival rate. I think you've had it for 2 years. And so I drove back to the prison, shackled by myself in the back of a van, thinking I had 3 years to live and 14 years to the parole board. So that had a huge impact on how I see everything else, right? I started to think about legacy. Started to think about, okay, if this is it, what am I going to do with the time that I have left? Like every second counts now. And the truth of that is that we all have a death sentence, man. It doesn't matter if it's 3 years or 30 years. Every second counts. All things matter. And that pivotal paradigm shift for me really brought me into realizing that I have something to give from my experience to others, and that really that's my calling. So I believe that my criminality manifested itself as a distortion because of my trauma and my addiction, right? So I'm ingesting chemicals. I have this bad trauma, which has been unresolved. I'm ingesting chemicals, so it is manifesting itself in this twisted way, where I am now aggressive in life, in physical life. I'm very intolerant. I have prejudices and biases, and everything is this and that. And once I cleared that up, once I began to remove those lenses, then my true nature began to show itself. And I committed to, so I figured, okay, you got 3 years left to live, Cam. I just made a commitment to give everything I had away. And I don't mean like my television or my sweats, I mean me. And so I started working with my brothers in there. And I felt my purpose. I felt connected, finally, to other people. And I believe in my way that is exactly why I'm still alive today. That when you find that, where you find your purpose and you begin to manifest it in life, the universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, creates a path for you to do that. Johann Hari said in a TED Talks once that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but connection. And I have absolutely found that to be true in my own life. As a matter of fact, I wrote about it in a thesis I did in 2010 about the war on drugs. But I believe that the opposite of connection is judgment. Nothing kills connection faster than judgment. When people are self-judging themselves with shame and guilt, they are cutting themselves off to other people because they don't feel worthy of connection. They don't feel, and so they hide. Like I know from my own addiction, when I would start to use, I disappeared from everybody I knew. I was gone. And I see it in my clients today. They run, they're runners. You're escaping. You're covering your own shame and guilt. And so the first principle I try to practice is acceptance. And that has to do with so everybody's path is different. For me to come in as a parent advocate or as a peer and compare myself to you is a form of judgment, okay? I'm not comparing myself to you. I am respecting your own path. Maybe we have the same feelings and issues, but your path through that is going to be completely different than mine. I'm going to share what my path was like. Maybe you can glean some stuff from that, but I'm not going to say, this is what you need to do, right? You have to do it this way. No, I think that, again, will supply more judgment, and I found that even as I come in as a parent advocate, that I can shine too bright. Does that make sense? Like I can come in and say, look at me now, everything is great, and I did all of this, and they feel that just disempowers them, right? And that is the exactly opposite of what I want to do. I want to slowly connect with them and then start to let my fire and light energize them. My own path through it, I became, after those years of addiction, which most of our clients find themselves in, I was spiritually and emotionally bankrupt. I lacked the energy to go through treatment. Like, I tried several times to go through treatment, and I would hit this barrier where the initial phase was over with, and what we're talking about, and I had burned all the energy I had, emotional, and I had nowhere else to go with it, and I lacked the ability to get through everything that needed to be taken. This time, what I did was I began to reconnect with things that supported my emotional and spiritual status and gave me energy. And that's really what provided the energy to get through long-term change, right? We know from neuroplasticity that it takes a consistent change in thought to rebuild neural connection. And that's just also there's the body, right? You need to heal the body. That's going to take a year, man. Especially if you've been abusing like methamphetamine or opiates or whatever, man, and you've been doing that for a couple of years, man, your mind is trashed, your body is trashed, and then expecting parents to just, oh, here, change. You have 3 months now to get into, man, that bar is way too high. That bar's way too high. They need a longer period. First of all, just to be able to make the decision to commit to the treatment. What I found is all of those different programs work. MRT, CBT, DBT, strategies for self, they all work, but they only work to the level that the participant is willing to engage. And that should be the standard. That's how we should be measuring how we are supporting our clients, is how can we engage them? If they don't have the energy or the ability to engage, then how can we get that done? The biggest thing should be connection, right? The biggest should be the paramount, the connection. Then once the connection is made, then we can start adding in the teaching. I believe in source energy, right? And that everything happens for a reason. I think what distorts that is when we are living in our trauma and not in our true selves. So when we begin to shed that, our biases, our prejudices, our traumas that have affected the lens, the way we see it, and we just are who we really are, then the result that happens is what is supposed to happen. Even if it's hurt and harmful, like the truth is that the world is dangerous place and bad things happen. I went through a lot of trauma as a child and as an adult. I caused a lot of trauma. But if I hadn't gone through all of that, I don't think I'd be the same man I am today. And I like and love who I am today. And I think that's the same thing that it is with the system. The system is going through some trauma. The system is still struggling and finding itself. But eventually it will evolve, as long as we keep continuing to pursue it, into something that we can really respect and think that it is a positive thing in the community.